Welcome to Operation Lynch. Our podcast sparks curiosity, inspires creativity, and releases the potential of education. I'm your host, Jaren, and this is
Samiir.
and we're excited to go on this educational trip with you. Today we will learn some history about Ida B. Wells, a famous activist, teacher, journalist, and mother. But before we get into our topic, I want you to think of a world without women. Ooh, what could be done without them? Or can we say women are the key in our modern society? Think about it. How could you digest if we don't have a brave woman like Ida B. Wells, which fought equality, sexism, and segregation, which arguably is the most brave woman in her time? Her effort brought to African American freedom. Men are the key in our modern history, like fighting for freedom, innovating technology, and discover ideas. Samir, what do you have to say more about?
I think it's really strange time to think about that. Men are the only one who brought everything like fighting and like creating new idea, discover all that stuff. But I would really like to shine is that we need a woman, and the reason that we need a woman is not only they can be a mother, but also they can be heroes. Think about it. Because when I say they can be heroes, what I mean by that is that if you circle back in history, you will surprise how the women play a huge role of fighting freedom, and they're not only fighting freedom but also they will creating a system, a well fundamental system which will serve us like next generation very well. I'm not saying that man did not create a fundamental system, but what I'm saying is that man they took all the credits and they say we are the only one who done that. But to be honest and to be fair, I would say women they also play a huge role which help us to understand what it looks like fighting for freedom. Like in our topic Ida B. Wells, she was not only a mother, she's not only be activist, but she was also education woman which helped her to spread her message of lynching. Think about it, that one. At that time, like 20th century or early or at the end of 18th century, women they were few of women they only were educated. But as a woman of color, Ada B. Wells, she won't take us to the mile, which is she really discovered how disadvantage of people of color. I'm not saying is that men are the key, but I'm saying is that in order to really complete that puzzle, we should also include in the women at the keys also, and then they are also superheroes in this story of telling freedom.
Hold on. You're saying that we see men as the heroes in history, but what were the women's roles in history? How come we don't learn about women being heroes in history fighting for freedom?
I think that question is really 1 million bucks to answer, and I would say I'm not saying that the men were the one who were actors. What I'm saying is that we heard a lot of single stories, which is really we digested a lot, and when we were in high school, we never learned that Ada B. Wells nor other activists, especially women. But what I'm saying is that there is a couple of of ideas that circle in our society, especially nowadays. What I'm saying is that the women they were really like the frontierin. They were the only who were really pushing the movement, and there were only people, or there were only like the gender who recognized the gap between poor and rich. And I would say is that I'm not saying is that the man they didn't play a huge role. That we had, we learned a lot of history. The men they were brave and they would really do a lot of stuff. But we never learned or we never taught that the women they also fighting freedom in their own terms. And for example, like Ada B. Wells, she was standing like Congress, or she was standing in front of big buildings, and she was gave to them or handling to them like newspapers, and which she was talking about the new ideas and also lighting the light lynching. What I'm saying is that the women we denied their rights, and we heard single story, and I wanted you to think that the danger of single story, which is really one thing that we have to think about it, and the women in terms of the women equality or in terms of fighting for freedom, the women they were had their own perspectives, and they were like area recognizable, and they really created a well fundamental system which is served and succeeded the movement.
So, Samir, have you heard of Ida B. Wells before?
Not really. I heard a little bit her story, but I never go through her poem and her like biography.
Well, let me tell you. According to her biography, she was born in Holly Springs, Mississippi on July 16th, 1862. She was the oldest daughter of James and Lizzie Wells. The Wells family, they was born into slavery, but they was later free when the Emancipation Proclamation came. This is about 6 months after Ida's birth. Man, isn't she a lucky woman to just not really experience slavery like that?
Absolutely, extremely very lucky woman, and imagine that time there is no medicine. And the interesting thing is that imagine if you were at that time where black or people of color, do you think you will get more cure? Do you think you can go to a doctor to ask medication?
Oh no. And see, even later on, well, she went to Shaw University and she got her early schooling. But however, at the age 16, she did have to drop out for a tragedy that struck her family.
Yeah, I don't. That's really very sad, and I don't know if that has to do a little bit like the fever that goes around, and yeah, there's a lot.
Well, it was because of yellow fever. Her parents did die of yellow fever, so kind of goes back to your point. Not a lot of colored people they could get the right treatment to be cured. But it is what it is.
But I was wondering, like, her parents, like, what are they doing? Are they part of some movement? Are they were like, like how they paying their living? That's what I want to know a little bit.
I'm glad you asked me that question. Well, her parents were active in the Republican Party during Reconstruction. Her father, James, was involved in the Freedom's Aid Society and helped start Shaw University, a school for the newly freed enslaved people, now is Russ College, and served on the first board of trustees. The Reconstruction era was a period in the United States history following the American Civil War, dominated by legal, social, and political challenges abolishing slavery and integrating the former Confederate States of America into the United States.
So I was a little bit curious that since her parents, especially her father, since he involved a couple of university, and do you think that gives her more privilege to understand how to read and how to write, since like we can say like her parents they were educated?
Yes, I think that it gave her more privilege to education because not a lot of African Americans at the time knew how to read and write. Her parents was very strict on her about education. So I wouldn't put it past the parents to enforce education on her so that she was able to read and write. And obviously, in the long run, it helped her write news articles to expose the horrific dangers of lynching and was being done to African American people.
Uh, I think it really does make sense because, imagining history and we learn or we taught that many people of color they don't know how to read, know how to write, and I think her family came from that background of education. I think it's a little bit like a cheat code to really understand that the importance of education, and later on, that education helped her to integrate this kind of system that learning and writing is something that you can send a message. And I want to really want to go a little bit depth that the education at that time it wasn't really that much, it doesn't really matter that much, but a certain group of people they really get educated. And in history you learn that you know man, people of color they can go, to school as a whites and they can get educated. But at that time, her, Ada B. Wells, she was really have that privilege. But I would really wanna also come this of sympathy that, you know, writing or be educated, it also comes responsibility, which is you have to be on top of your game, and also you have to really address the issue. And I think that's what get into writing the newspaper of lynching. And I think that's really as I said for this, that's kind of advantage. But I would really want to understand her civil rights and how she, since she was live at the same time with Douglas, how she become a little bit more involved in terms of civil rights, and what other people of color, especially Douglas, saying about her. And I would really want to go into that little bit topic. And I think I really wanna, as I said before, at that time, the construction era, it was, the time that United States going through, change, a lot of, the Congress where, you know, pass a bill that the black or people of color they can vote, and it was, the time change. But I want to really wanna little bit like how Ada B. Wells really to be the more resistant with women. And in we all know that one fact that she was involved accident in the train when the conductor tried to remove her despite she had the ticket. And you can see how the women they can really understand and be more brave when it's mattering the most. I'm not saying that the women, they can really do nothing, but they have this kind of, like early recognize when it comes unjustifiable or injustice. But the ADB was, she was not only talking about or, only going the movement of lynching, but also she was writing. And like when you're writing something, you're not only sending message your local area, but your message is gonna go is all the way in the United States, all that era. Imagine at that time if she had an internet. Imagine at that time if she had a like a modern technology. Her voice it will go literally everywhere. And that's one thing that we have to recognize in here, that the women they were really Wonder Women, and they play a huge role. But we heard a lot of just a man, they did that, they do that kind of stuff. And it just like like we violating the right of women. And the women they were really fighting not the only ADB was, but there's other women who really going through at the same same struggle. But the ADB was, she was the woman that says, hey, we're not going anywhere. We have to find what we want. We have to find our rights, and it's time to stand up as people of color and recognize our rights. And that really helps her to believe what she believes. And like lynching, for example, lynching, it was like I don't know, lynching is come all the way in 1960s until early 1970s. Lynching is a method that to terrorize the people of color. Like, for example, you will see newspaper. Hey, this, the young black, he touched a white woman, or he talked to his master this, so we have to lynch him. So that method was a terrorizing, and Ada B was she said it, and one of her quotes, she said it like the lynching is the method that the people they want to eliminate in our in our intensity, or in our people of color, and lynching is the key. And I want to say like the Douglas or Martin Luther King or other people, they were talking about foreign, and they were talking about equality, but the topic that was fascinating to us was lynching, because many of us we don't really understand lynching and how was barbaric at that system of lynching. Like when they lynching people at that time, they not only lynch specific, four walls, and they put in that person in just in one facility. They lynch in front of people. Think about it, in front of people, which is the white people, they were cheering, they were they were like doing a lot of stuff, and at that time it was the people of color, they were lynched, they were terrorizing, and on top of that they were publishing newspaper. Like imagine you go, you work, you come back and you see newspaper that say yesterday was lynched a young black guy, black man. Imagine how you will feel.
All right, so now I want to touch on Ida B. Wells' accomplishments. After she noticed there were several brutal assaults on the African American community in Springfield, Illinois in 1908, Wells sought to take action. The following year, she attended a special conference for the organization that would later become known as the NAACP, which is known as the National Association for Advancement of Colored People, which she is one of the founding members for. Wells later cut ties with the organization, explaining that she felt the organization in its infancy at the time she left lacked action-based initiatives. Working on behalf of all women, as a part of her work with National Equal Rights League, Wells called for President Woodrow Wilson to put an end to discriminatory hiring practices for government jobs. Wells also created the first African American kindergarten in her community and fought for women's suffrage. In 1930, she made an unsuccessful bid for the Illinois State Senate. So, Samiir, after hearing her story on what she accomplished, what makes her different from other women in the suffrage movement or fought for freedom and all that, for example, like Rosa Parks?
I think I would say a lot, and because in here we're not only talking about like her achievement, no, we're not talking about like her. Basically, it's her story, but here we talking about it's some a female that really take a courage that to face this this corruption system where people of color will be treated very badly, and not only they not only get lynched, but they also like lack of opportunity. Like you see like like interesting certain topic about like fighting for freedom. Ada B. Wells, I would say she was the top tier of fighting freedom, and she was not only looking for like established like first kindergarten or people of color. She was into this system, and she wanted really go depth and to understand why this is happening. And I would say Ada B. Wells, we have to really study her story, and there's a reason that I'm saying is that she was not only saying like there's lynches. She go to understand why, and once you understand why, you will find a lot of answers. She tried to understand why people get lynched, And I don't know if you added, your narrative about, why she was interested in lynching. She, why she was not interested in lynching, but she, when she found out her friend is going to get lynched often, she was trying to understand why this is happening. And it really like inspired her to go farther and even be called the White House. And it's really something amazing that happens a lot. And nowadays, we not really recognize those women as they were brave, they were ahead of their times, and they were, going through a hell of, like a lot of struggles. And I would say we have to understand how to, to understand or learn in history. And sometimes I ask myself, are we really learning in real history? Because I never heard AW was. Have you heard AW was?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's just like we just learn a lot of single story. We only learn a lot of something only. This is what he said it. This is what he said it. But we didn't hear his. I would ask you this question: what do you think where the woman play in the role of community?
I feel like a woman played in a rural community, did the usual things like be the caretakers of men and children. Obviously, this kind of seems a little feminist, but they do their regular roles like cook, clean, and all that. But I feel like they didn't have much of a high role to make change. But when you
So, do you think that's why it comes the history bad? Because you said it, the women they're only doing like the cleaning, raise the children, take care of women, take care of men. So, do you think this is how we create this narrative of women? They can do nothing. They can't do the man as they did before.
that could definitely be true. There's a lot of factors that could be the case on why we view women in their kind of passive roles. But I feel like that could be a key part because in history, we all get our information based off history. So if we learn that mostly men do things or men is the ones that's empowered to create change, then obviously we're gonna believe that. And if we just believe that women didn't really do much and all that, then we're gonna also believe that. But I also feel like with Ida B. Wells and Rosa Parks, I feel like they're the ones that kind of help women step up. Because even in today's society, women are stepping up to higher, bigger roles. We're seeing women running for presidency, for Senate. True, even Ida B. Wells even tried to run for Senate. So I actually believe that one day we're going to come to a point where women would end up being in more power than men. Or if not more, around the same power as men. Don't you agree?
I think I would say that, but I don't want to just say, hey, the women should do all the stuff or hold responsibility. What I'm saying is that it should be sharing power. It should be 50-50, and also we have to see the women, become the United States, the president of the United States. And as you said it before, we just learn in history, someone said it that, someone said that, but we never really go depth as we did this project of badass women. Because this topic or this, this kind of, like investigating, it teaches us how the history can give some people credit and other people, ignore them. And that's what I will really encourage people to really go depth and to study very well. And one thing that I also want to see is that the badass women or badass class, it should be taught or teach all the high schoolers and elementary. And what I mean by that, you're not only seeking education but also you seeking the truth, which is, hey, men and women, they were a same chairs, they were same table, and they will fight for freedom, and that's how it's supposed to be now. And this project is really shows us when you try to educate yourself certain topics, you will find or discover a new truth, which is what you believed before. And nowadays, it's easy to just hear bias, single story, stereotypical, but learning something like very advantage to you, it will serve long term. I will ask you this question: do you think now, in terms of pay, in terms of equality, in terms of education, in terms of work environment, men and women are equal?
Um, Honestly, I feel like to some degree it depends on what type of work. But overall, I will kind of say no because I always hear stories of where women complain that men are getting paid more than them, but they do more work than the men do. So I feel like there's some sexism that correlates with that. But obviously, there are some fair companies where they pay everyone equally. But overall, I wouldn't say that they're equally in the workforce. But in terms of education, I feel like yes, they're equal education. For the most part, everybody learns the same thing. Um, but in terms of the work environment, sometimes it's just kind of tough. So you just never know.
Um, yeah, I want to go that topic a little bit. I would say some work environment a little bit scam. They just say, oh, the men and women are equal, but in reality, not. And for example, like Ada B. Wells, when she was starting publishing her newspaper, she was not getting that more recognized. Like they didn't recognize her because she's the woman. And a lot of people they disassociate to reading her publish, and that will come as back all the way in history now, where some women when they try, for example, driving, be mechanic, be like soldier, it really have we still have that stigma of the women can be same table as a man. But I want to say this: Ada B. Wells, she is really the symbol of a system. She is the woman that we have to follow her method, and also she is the one we have to study very well how she tackled this barbaric topic and how she succeeded, and that's one thing we understand. And this is our podcast. I'm Samir.
And I'm Jaren. And you're listening to Operation Lynch, which also is acronym Life You Could Never Have.
And if you want to go little, if you want to study this little bit, this topic very well, we really encourage you to go ahead biography. And also, if you're not the kind of person to read, and maybe you can watch crash course, which is 4 minute or 5 minute video, which is really breaking down her history and shows you how she go zero to hero. That's just it. Thank you so much, everybody.
And thank you very much for listening. Stay tuned.